Okay, so getting into that subject of reverse apprenticeship, how does a reverse apprenticeship work? Well, you probably should understand how a regular apprenticeship works. A regular apprenticeship works means that in one way or another, you're the junior or the lesser skilled person in a particular trade, and you try to find another person or a master craftsman or somebody who's higher ranking than yourself, who's willing to pay you to learn the trade. So you would be their employer, I'm their employee, the helping hand, and you work for them. And so there's two things that are going on, and one of the things to understand in a down economy, a lot of people don't want to bring on the apprentices because it's so little work that as soon as an apprentice gets up to skill, that becomes competition. And so why bring the competition into your own fold? And so that's where a lot of these older guys, and I'm going to say this at the risk of sounding racist, white people are probably the worst for this in the modern age. White Americans are probably the absolute worst at apprenticeship and mentoring the younger generation than anybody else is. A lot of other people, a lot of other ethnic groups, nationalities understand the concept of apprenticeship and mentoring and the implied deal that goes along with apprenticeship and mentoring. Other people understand this and practice it far better and far more efficiently these days than white Americans do. With white Americans, for some reason, there's a lot of friction between generations that's causing this problem. So when you see apprenticeship situations happening in the job place these days, a lot of times what you're going to see is things that are not working on the old patterns, or if they are working on the old patterns, they're probably working among people who don't speak English in traditional apprenticeship. So the younger generation, especially white Americans, really doesn't have what the older generations had as far as the opportunity in a traditional apprenticeship to get paid, make a living, and learn a trade. It doesn't work as well because the older generation is quite often these days going to see them as competition. And that's a pattern that really started in the 80s. The whole idea of pulling the ladder up, it's been one of the reasons unions have been shrinking over the decades, is they don't want to apprentice new people because they don't want to share the work, they don't want to share the employment, they don't want to share the opportunity. You've got all these 50-year-old guys who know everything, who really don't. They want to work that last 10 or 15 years into the retirement because they're afraid of the economy and they're afraid of what could happen. And so they're not spreading the knowledge, or they're only doing it through specific schools. And if you go and you get all the schooling, you're going to find out that there's still a lot of information that's being withheld. And so somebody says, well, you've got to get the education and then you've got to apprentice, especially on any kind of work or trade where there's real cash available, where somebody says, wait a minute, we can do this work or this trade and get paid cash. It's not really a long, involved approval process. It's a question of, I can accomplish X, Y, Z for this much money, and somebody says, wow, that's great, okay, well, you get that done, I give you money. It's a very simple, straightforward situation. I've done some other videos and some other stuff being done in parallel to this, where I've been doing a lot of research and meet and greet with a local Masonic lodge, and traditionally there's a lot of good knowledge in that stuff, whether or not you agree with other issues on a Masonic movement or character. So in the reverse apprenticeship, you've got to find somebody with more skills than you have and figure out how you can get them at your table in such a way that you're going to get access to that, because they're unlikely to hire and pay and financially support you and teach you their trade so that you would later become a competitor, which means you need to find the skilled people who are in need of other things that you're capable of offering, especially if it's an environment where a lot of these highly skilled 40, 50, 60-year-old guys, they're still in good enough shape to do the work themselves. It's not like they need somebody else to be the hands for the skills they have. And I want to get into that in the next segment on, we've talked about how a traditional apprenticeship works, how somebody who with greater skill, greater resources, who has everything, brings on somebody with lesser skill and resources, teaches them the trade and financially supports them, obviously at kind of a diminished level from what a full-on capable person would have. And that's not readily available to the younger generation these days. The older guys a lot of times can barely take care of themselves. Sometimes they can't take care of themselves financially because they were just skilled workers. They didn't develop it as an entire business. And by not developing a business model, they're not even capable of taking on apprentices. But those people can still be a valuable asset to you in your quest for independence through reverse apprenticeship, which I'm going to go into in more detail in the next segment.